Hey guys, welcome back to another video here on Tone In Entertainment, where we love pop culture. Today it's time for some more comic book reviews as I continue on with my series I call First Impressions, where I take a look at this week's issue number ones in comic books, give them a read, and see if they made enough of a good impression to continue on with them. Now this week I'm going to take a look at 4 different comic books, and we're going to swing into things with Savage Spider-Man issue number 1 from Marvel Comics. Now, if you're looking for a comic series that is fun to look at and light on dialogue, Savage Spider-Man might be up your alley. Writer Joe Kelly drops us right into the savage land of the Isle of the Damned, where we'll see that while Spider-Man might be stronger than ever physically, the trade-off will be that other characteristics will be sacrificed. Now, not only will Spider-Man have to deal with some physical battles, but some mental ones as well. And while for the most part issue number 1 relies more on in-your-face action, there are some clues to what the bigger picture of the series is gonna be. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give issue number 1 of Savage Spider-Man a 6 out of 10, which for me is just above average. Now, while issue number 1 didn't wow me, it did pique my interest enough to want to check out issue number 2, as I feel there are some interesting possibilities moving forward. And while the story is light on dialogue, what really makes the story an attention grabber is the art and lettering in its rock'em sock'em style. Now, while I did find issue number 1 interesting, if you're thinking about going out and purchasing this one, my advice would be not to go out and grab this one right away, and maybe check it out later down the line with a discounted rate. Next up from Behemoth Comics, we have Until My Knuckles Bleed, issue number 1. The 90s were the best of times, and I'm not the only one who agrees with that statement, but so does the main character here in issue number 1 of Until My Knuckles Bleed, a man named Gavin Hart, or as he was formerly known as the Damager, a moniker in which he was a true superhero. But here in present day, he's not only dealing with the physical scars, but the emotional ones as well, as him and his buddies, and even his ex-wife Kendra, aka Avenge Lady, are all dealing with the after effects of being a superhero. And while the good old days might be in their rear view mirror, Gavin is just trying to live a normal life as possible, with his job of being a bouncer at a gentleman's club where he has no problem taking out the trash, no matter what form it's in. And as far as his personality goes, he's a hard worker that he believes is underpaid. But that doesn't stop him from not only being a good employee, but also going above and beyond his job requirements. In present day, Gavin is still remembered for being a superhero and was popular enough that he could still make autograph appearances at comic book conventions. Now, there are a new group of superheroes in present day, but let's just say Gavin isn't very impressed. Now, when Gavin gets a visit from an FBI agent, the possibilities open back up that the Damager might be done on creating new stories after all. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give issue number 1 of Until My Knuckles Bleed an 8 out of 10. Now, when I first started reading this issue written by Victor Santos, I noticed that some of the dialogue didn't flow well, but as I kept reading, I figured out this is actually done on purpose, as there is a language barrier with the characters in this issue. Now, I really did enjoy the story here of a former badass soldier from the 90s who believes that superheroes these days are as tough as fluffy marshmallows, and I'm all on board to see some Knuckles bleed if the Damager has to come out of retirement. Next up from AWA Upshot, we have Primos issue number 1. The story focuses on young adult Ricky Pascal, who enjoys playing some video games and likes to party maybe just a little too much at times when he should be at home watching his younger brother. And while this seems like normal for a guy his age, on this night he's visited by a 1500-year-old Mayan emperor named Janab, who comes with a message that it's time for Ricky to fulfill his destiny and that his people are in trouble. Now, while it's in his bloodline to be a hero, it also appears that it's his bloodline that is also responsible for the damage as well. Now, here in issue number 1, we'll get to see Ricky tap into his powers, even if it's momentarily, and get a quick glimpse of his 2 cousins, or should I say Primos, in action. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give issue number 1 of Primos an 8.5 out of 10. Now, I'm a big fan of the show Ancient Aliens, and it definitely feels like writer Al Madrigal takes some influences from the show, and that's a good thing as we see this ancient Mayan civilization that had all this superior technology return here in 2022, only to see their people wiped out, which will create a conflict between two brothers, one of which seeks revenge, and the other whose mission is to bring enlightenment to the entire solar system. Now, while we don't get too much info here in issue number 1, we can figure out which brother came out on top and why Ricky and his two cousins, Javier and Gina, have been called into action. Now, issue number 1 was a great starting point for this 4-issue miniseries. As this is a comic series, I'm not only interested in continue on reading, but I'm definitely interested in doing a comic book series review when it all wraps up. And last but certainly not least, we have Sabretooth, issue number 1. A Sabretooth story is something I've been anticipating, and I'm happy to say that writer Victor Lavelle knocks issue number 1 right out of the park. Now, there is a lot to process here in issue number 1, as we'll see Sabretooth being banished into the darkness of Krakoa and making an inconceivable escape, to making dust out of X-Men that stand in his way, to not seeing eye to eye with Doug, the district attorney, to the revelations of Sabretooth and the Space Jammers, and to where this issue shines the brightest, and that's Sabretooth having the time of his life sitting on the throne of Krakoan hell. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm giving issue number 1 of Sabretooth a 9 out of 10. Issue number 1 is fun, it's brutal, it's in your face, and it's one heck of a wild ride that gives us a lot in this story, but also creates some confusion and leaves a lot of questions still to be answered over the next 4 issues of this 5-issue series. Alright guys, well, that's going to wrap up this week's First Impressions video. Now, out of the 4 comics I reviewed, what are your thoughts? Comment down below. Now, 3 out of the 4 are definitely ones I recommend you guys going and checking out. And whatever you're into, I think there's something for everybody, with some gritty crime with Until My Knuckles Bleed, some awesome sci-fi stuff with Primos issue number 1, and of course, just some classic comic book stuff with Sabretooth issue number 1. The only one out of these 4 I don't recommend you go out and purchase right away, that's going to be Savage Spider-Man. That one, for me at least, I'm going to wait till it comes on like Comixology Unlimited and check out the entire series end. Alright guys, if you like comic book reviews like this and all things pop culture, make sure you stay tuned in here to Toned In Entertainment for future videos.
Subscribe to the channel. Do it. Go now. Do it now.